What's up, people? So today we're going to go over a brief rundown on how to set up, execute, and do the conventional deadlift in the best way possible. This is an exercise that is classically used to develop leg strength, full body strength, and used across the board in a lot of different gyms and training programs. And it is a great exercise. However, in order to get the most out of it, we want to make sure we're doing it in the best way possible. So for those of you that don't know, my name is Tim from Styro Fitness and Nutrition. And when we're going over the deadlift, first thing I want to touch on is how to set this up from a sets and reps perspective. It's good to know what sets and reps we're going to be using, because then it's going to help dictate what the weight is that we put on the bar and where this might fit into a training day program or a training workout for you. So overall, because this is a full body exercise, there's a lot of stress and a lot of stimulus being placed on the body, not just in my legs, which would be the main kind of muscles that we're trying to recruit here, but also my grip, my upper back, my lower back, my abs, possibly other areas as well, such as my neck as the weight gets heavier. And I don't say that in a bad way. I just say that in a way where it's important to understand this so you know and can realize that maybe the conventional deadlift might not be the best exercise to try to do as many reps as possible every single time, because you might limit yourself and might put yourself in a position where you're increasing your injury risk. So what I like to do is probably keep things in the set range of maybe anywhere from 3 to 5, and probably anywhere from 1 or 2 reps to up to 6 to 8 reps. With other deadlift tools and other deadlift equipment, such as a sumo stance or a trap bar deadlift, and we'll cover those in future videos. Those ones are a little joint friendlier, and they might be a better option for you if you decide you want to try to do more repetitions and handle more training volume with that deadlift motion. When we approach the bar, first thing we want to make sure is what our feet are like. So we want to make sure that we understand this concept and really kind of drive this point home, because it's going to set us up from the ground up. So when I go to approach the bar, I want to make sure that my feet are going to be firmly on the ground the entire time. Whenever we do some type of leg exercise, our main points of contact are going to be the ball of my big toe, the ball of my pinky toe, and my entire heel, really making sure that I have that stable base to push off the ground from to help recruit the leg muscles that I am trying to lift, or I'm trying to use in the lift. Now, when I approach the bar, I want to make sure that as I stand, I want to make sure that it is between the knot of my shoe and the shin. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to change the angle so you can see that a little bit better. So just hang tight 1 sec. In order for you to get a better understanding of what I'm talking about with my feet, I'm going to have the camera just point down. Thank you, Seth. And a little bit closer. Keep coming, keep coming. So as you can see, that bar is really kind of in between that knot of the shoe and my shin. And as I go through this motion, I'm going to want to keep it there, moving in that straight line up and down as best as I can. Now that we've covered our feet and where our feet should be when we get set up, we're going to get into how to set ourselves up in the hinge position so you can be in the most advantageous possible for each rep. So as I go, the way I'm going to do this first, if you've never done a deadlift before, what it really is a hinge motion where my hips are moving horizontally, backwards and forwards, versus vertically up and down as they would in any type of squat variation. So what I want to do for the first time is to run through it, and if you know what you're doing, then just be patient and stick around and we'll get more into the nitty gritty. But I like to start with my hands on my hips. I'm going to imagine that my hands are filled with either groceries, if you want to keep them at the side, or something that you're holding. And I'm going to imagine I'm kind of closing a car door or any kind of door behind me as I kind of fold myself in half and I end up facing the ground a little bit more. And then I'm going to stand back up. When I go through this and when you go through this, you want to make sure that you have control of your spine, and you don't want to just be rounding and kind of collapsing yourself down to the floor. So think about reaching the hips back, pushing the hips back, and you should feel a good stretch on the back side of the legs. Once you get used to that, In order to get down closer to this bar, we're gonna go ahead and continue to hinge back. And then once we feel like we can't hinge anymore, I'm gonna go ahead and just squat down a little bit more. And then I'm gonna stand back up. Repeat that a few more times, hinge back, and then start bending the knees and coming down. What you should feel and what you should notice is that as I come down, right, my hips are higher than my knees, my shins are slightly forward, and then as I stand up, I wanna push through that tripod foot that we went over to stand up nice and tall. As I stand up and as you stand up as you go through this, and when we get actually onto the bar, I want to be sure that as I stand up, I don't just thrust my hips forward and throw my shoulders back. I'm going to stop standing and stop moving when my hips, shoulders, and head are in a straight line with each other. That's as far as you need to go. You don't need to continue to rock forward because it's unwanted movement that we should really be that we're looking for, and it might cause a little more stress on the lower back and create improper lift. Up to this point, we've gone over our foot placement, we've gone over how we should be moving our hips, knees, and ankle, what should we be kind of really doing with our back and our spine. So now we're gonna put that together as we approach the bar here. So, like we went over, feet firmly on the ground. I'm gonna go ahead and make sure my tripod foot is there, ball of the big toe, ball of the pinky toe, whole heel. And I'm gonna go ahead and this time, instead of having my hands at my side, I'm gonna have them right in front. So I'm gonna actually go to the bar on this one. So hips go back. As I go back farther, I slowly bend my knees and my hands should be able to reach the bar, no problem. And my grip width is going to be right on the outside of my shins. Now this brings up a good point that we didn't touch on yet as we were talking about the feet, is how far should my feet be? What should the stance width be for you and for your deadlifts and your own specific individual needs to do the exercise the best way you can. So traditionally we want to be between hip and shoulder width apart. Anywhere in there is probably going to be okay. If you have never done anything like this before, this is your first time trying to really improve your deadlift technique, what we can do is do a quick little kind of assessment test, if you will, to find out what that best starting point could be. And we're going to do this by performing a vertical jump. Now, when you go up the ground, off the ground in the air, come back down, the position that your feet land in will be a good starting point for you to determine where your stance width should be when you approach the bar. So let's go through that real quick. I'm gonna go ahead and pop down, jump up, and my feet land right about here. That's where I'm gonna try to stay close to when I approach the bar. Now remember, this isn't perfect and this isn't going to be like set in stone. If you find that for whatever reason you do that kind of jump and land assessment to find out your foot placement and it just doesn't feel right, you have all the ability in the world to go wider, go narrower, or turn your feet out to the side to see what feels comfortable for you, because everybody's going to have different measurements, different hip joints, different leg lengths, and all that kind of stuff that's going to be added into this individualization. So be sure to find a stance width that best fits what you can do, that allows you to perform the exercise in the best way you can. Okay, so next place we're gonna look to is our arms, our spine, our head, and our eyes. As you get to the bar, as we go down, and as you go down the same way we've done already, hips go back, start to squat down, arms at the side. What I wanna do to make sure my arms and back are set is I want to rotate my arms and my elbows so that they're facing the wall behind me. What that's going to do is recruit a lot of muscle throughout the spine, such as our back, such as our lats, such as our shoulders, to make sure we have a nice, strong, stable backside and posterior chain to keep the bar exactly where it needs to be as we lift off the ground, but also more importantly, as we return to the ground. Gonna go down, that one fell off, hips back, down, elbows turned out to the side, and as soon as I do that, and as soon as you do that, when you get to it, you should feel a lot of muscle here and some muscle along the backside as well, kind of right in that shoulder blade area to hold that there. With our back, we want to make sure that we're in a controlled, stable, and somewhat neutral position. Rather than trying to find this perfect balance between extension, flexion, more importantly is being able to control whatever position you're in. So too much of this won't be a good position. Too much of this won't be a good position. So we want to find that middle ground. And for me, the way I like to find that middle ground is my head and tailbone should be in a straight line with each other. So what I mean by that is I go down right here. I'm not looking behind. I'm not looking straight up. I have a nice straight position from the top of my head down to my tailbone that way. What that's also going to do is put us in a position where my shoulders are slightly over the bar, which is going to help us maintain a nice closed bar position so that we can kind of stay in this hinge motion and not turn a deadlift into a squat. Last piece in this little segment here is going to be with my eyes. When I approach the bar, eyes a lot of times can be preferences based on, again, what you're comfortable with, what feels best for you. For myself, and the way I typically coach people to do it is I'm looking about 45-ish degrees in front of me. So as I come down, my eyes are looking right there, kind of on the floor, and I'm going to keep my gaze there the entire time as I come up. So just so you can see what that looks like so far, we'll run through a couple reps. So I'm going to go ahead and hinge down, elbows turned out to the side, feet set, and up. One last thing that we're going to talk about before we kind of talk about the descent down into the ground is going to be our abs and our core. So our core is going to be used just to make sure we can keep some tension, keep some intra-abdominal pressure within our body as we lift to make sure we can support the entire system. Best way I can explain this is if you have never kind of really felt your abs in the best way before when you're doing a lift, whether it's in a deadlift, whether it's in a squat or any type of like lifting exercise, what you can do is kind of have your hands right on your ribs and just take a long breath out as if you're trying to fill up a balloon. And you should feel your hands kind of descend down along with your ribs and along with your abs, specifically these kind of abdominal ones. From there, we're going to go ahead and take a nice big breath in and then maintain that pressure and maintain that ab tension as we approach the bar. So again, as we can approach it this way, I'm going to take a breath out, take a breath in. I'm going to engage my abs to keep that pressure high, and then I'm going to approach that bar, elbows turned out to the back, eyes looking forward, feet firmly on the ground, and then I push up, extend, and back down. One more. One last thing we haven't touched on, and I think this is probably the most important part of doing a deadlift, and just about any lower body exercise for that matter, is this concept of really pushing through the floor. If you've done a leg press before, you know what that feeling's like of kind of pushing the weight away from you. That's how I want you to visualize extending your hips and using your legs through a deadlift. Imagine you're just pushing the earth away from you, and that's going to help you stand up nice and tall, and that's how you should finish each lift. And what that's going to do, that's going to give us the opportunity to directly recruit our leg muscles, so we don't just do this kind of leaning back thing where I'm putting way more work than I should be on my lower back and my arms and upper back as well. So as I approach this one last time, before we talk about the descent, I'm going to really make sure everything's engaged the way it should be, feet firm, and I'm really driving my legs into the floor, pushing through my whole foot, and coming up. In my professional experience, I think a lot of people tend to mess this part up the most when it comes to the deadlift. And that's going to be the action of lowering it back down to the ground. in the middle of your sets. And what I mean by this is when we go through our deadlift and when we go through this motion, the thing that we want to really try to avoid is reaching down with the bar. As soon as I start to reach down with the bar, that is going to go ahead and cause my upper back to round a little bit more. It's going to kind of put my shoulders in a compromised position, and it's not going to create and or continue to maintain the tension that we want to keep in order to keep ourselves feeling, the best way we can as we execute this exercise. In order to best work on that, we can think about those cues, be mindful of those cues, such as with the arms, meaning tension in our abs, meaning tension throughout the spine, throughout the muscles around the spine, but also really remembering that the motion of this is coming from the hips. And if I move through my hips, then I'm going to be able to keep that bar close to me, and I'm not going to have this desire to really reach the bar forward. And I'm going to show you an example of what that looks like when it's reaching versus when it's not. So here, we'll set ourselves up. Everything's good. Up, but reaching down looks like that. As you can see, maybe didn't look as pretty as you would expect, but I also didn't even get my hips back as far. Now I'm going to go ahead and hit it again, and the way that we've gone over already, the way to properly execute this, hips back, down, lock them in, drive it up, driving through the legs, driving through the hips, moving through the hips, and down like so. What you should notice is that more movement through my hips, more control with the weight, and being able to have a little bit more of an up and down bar path, which is going to make the weight feel easier for you even when it gets heavier. Conventional deadlift, now that you guys know how to do it, you'll see that it is a great exercise. It is one that can be very beneficial to develop full body strength, to develop lower body strength, and it's just a great exercise that I'm a big fan of, and I do think it's great to have the ability to execute this one, regardless of if you're trying to lift as much as you can, but being able to go through the movement is good for your body and your joints and your muscles and your bones. A couple of key points I want you to remember as you kind of close out this video. One, we're going to make sure that our feet contacts are on the ground, ball of the big toe, ball of the pinky toe, and our heel. We're going to make sure that as we go ahead and stand up with the bar, we're going to go ahead and push through the entire foot. As I approach the bar is going to be in between the knot of our shoelace and our shin. I'm going to move through my hips. I'm going to push my hips back and start to bend my knees as I go through that hinging motion, so that when I approach the bar and I get set up in that bottom, my hips are slightly higher than my knee joint. Hands going to be gripping that bar, turned out to the side, so I have my elbows facing behind me to help lock in those back muscles, help lock in those supportive shoulder muscles. And then as I go ahead and begin to stand up, I want to make sure my core is engaged, my head, shoulders, and hips are in a straight line. Continue to drive through the floor, and then I'm going to stand up nice and tall with my hips under my shoulders. Last run through. As I descend down, I want to keep that bar close. I'm going to go ahead and move through my hips, move through my legs, and I want to approach the bar without reaching forward so that I can maintain the integrity of my spine and I can maintain the safety of the exercise so I can continue to progress at it and get stronger over time. Hope this was helpful. If you want more information, you can check out more from styrofitnessandnutrition.com, links down below. And if you like this kind of run-throughs and you like these type of demos, if it helps your training, go ahead and drop a like, follow, subscribe, all the other stuff that's out there. Have great training and stay strong.